Could Labour be about to make your holiday abroad more expensive? It's time for the head-to-head. So, the Shadow Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, today refused to rule out an increase in the air passenger levy, as well as a potential hike in fuel duty in the future.
Can you rule out a change in council tax bands in the next Parliament, or a change in capital gains tax rates in the next Parliament, or a change in fuel duty in the next Parliament, or an air passenger duty in the next Parliament? You can't rule those things out, can you?
Well, look, we're not going to write a budget for a few years' time during a general election campaign. But we've been absolutely clear where revenue will come from to pay for public services, and absolutely clear about the argument we're making, which is for a stronger economy. It benefits all parts of the country. That is our industrial strategy, our green prosperity plan, our changes to planning so we get things built. These are tangible measures that would make a difference.
Well, last year, Labour came under fire after calling on ministers to reverse their plans to cut air passenger duty on domestic flights in half, from £13 to £6.50. But Jeremy Hunt clearly listened to those protests, because in March he announced the tax will rise in line with inflation from 2025 to 26. Britain is a global leader, believe it or not, when it comes to taxing travellers. And the £88 we are charged for flights between 2,000 and 5,500 miles is streets ahead of other countries, including almost double that of Germany. Since it was introduced 30 years ago, the total amount of tax collected each year has risen nearly tenfold. So, as a Labour frontbencher refuses to rule out raising the price of your trip abroad, would a Keir Starmer government now make your holiday more expensive? Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. Tweet me at GBNews and make sure you go and vote in our poll. We are going to be joined by the director of the Climate Media Coalition, Donica McCarthy, and co-founder of Climate Debate UK, Ben Pyle, very, very shortly. But before that, I wanted to get slightly more of a political voice on this with former Labour Defence Minister Ivor Catlin. Ivor, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. So, Labour's going to make holidays for the poorest in society more expensive, are they?
I don't see it like that, Patrick, at all. I think what Labour has done has been the right thing. It's said income tax, national insurance, VAT will all be the same. And all the other kind of very small, they are smaller taxes, they need to be dealt with, as Jonathan said this morning, by taking a view in the longer term, and that's really down to the potential new Chancellor if Labour is big enough and strong enough to win the general election.
I thought they were the party of the working class, though. With respect, however, I thought they were the party of the working class, you know, and making people's lives more miserable. If you're a family of four who just wants to go to Alicante, for example, and you want to get on a jet to a Ryanair flight, and you whack them with an additional bill, I mean, is that going to win you votes, is it?
But everyone knows that there is a bill for getting on a plane. At the moment, that's £6.50. It should be £13.50 because that was the rate it was. Well,
why should it be?
Because you've got to be able to manage the full economy here. You can't just have an economy that just allows you to go, oh, this is okay, this is not okay. You've got to be able to do things differently to the last 14 years.
But why does it... Sorry, I just don't understand why travellers have to pay more. I mean, well, it's not, you know, climate to me or someone who's, you know, someone from Birmingham who decides they want to go and have a week in Lanzarote. I mean, they're not causing the climate crisis. Why are they paying more for this under Labour?
No, it's not about climate crisis. This for me is about how Labour can make sure it can manage properly the longer term of the 5 years ahead of us if we are lucky enough to win the general election. That's the key thing. And part of that is to say, well, actually, we could change that amount so that everyone knows what it is. And as you just rightly said on your introduction, you know, Jeremy Hunt actually changed the suggestion by the current government. So it's down to us to follow that through and to be prepared to take that forward. And I think...
I just wonder, is you know, the allegation against someone like Keir Starmer is that actually, you know, he's a rabid socialist, he's just not telling anyone about it. And I just wonder whether or not actually he sees things like foreign holidays as a luxury for the bourgeoisie.
I don't think, people can go on holiday. Of course they can. I think, more importantly, what Labour has set out in the last few weeks was absolutely clear on those big three taxes: VAT, national insurance, income tax. On the smaller ones, and I don't want to call it that, on the smaller ones, like airport, I don't think there's a problem with putting some of that on, and everyone can manage their own situations. I tend to think, and I think that's good for Labour.
All right, Ivor, look, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Great to have your strong political voice there. That is former Labour Defence Minister Ivor Kaplan. Right, let's get stuck into the head-to-head now then, shall we? I'm joined by the director of the Climate Media Coalition, Donica McCarthy, and the co-founder of the Climate Debate UK, Ben Powell. Chaps, thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show. Look, Ben, I'll start with you. Do you think that this is a good thing? Why should passengers have to pay more tax to get on an aeroplane?
No, it's a terrible thing, and of course it's always more and more tax, and it's a sin tax, isn't it? Rather than explaining, rather than defending this wonderful freedom that people of our generation, recent generations now have to go and experience the entire world and to take in the culture, or just to take in temperatures that are just a few degrees perhaps more warmer than they are here. This is now regarded as something that needs to be punished and eliminated to the maximum extent possible. And I think this is the problem of, I think tax is always the last recourse. It's all, because there is no carrot. All of our MPs, all of our so-called democratic representatives have taken the view that emissions reduction targets must take precedence over everything else. And that includes understanding how they're going to deliver it. So as soon as they get into power, what they discover is there's no means to actually deliver these emissions reductions. So the only thing they can do is fine and impose taxes.
I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you, Donica. Keir Starmer took a private jet to Scotland the other week, and this is exactly what we're going to see, isn't it? It's normal, common people on the street getting clobbered with an extra whatever it turns out to be. Well, but actually, the rich just carry on, don't they? They get the private jets.
Well, actually, that's not the situation with this one, Patrick. What's very interesting, what is proposed by the Liberal Democrats, Green Party and the Cross-Party Committee on the Environment Committee are proposing a frequent flyer tax. What does that mean? It means that poor people who are taking a flight, as you say, to the sun holiday, don't pay anything extra, no tax extra. But the frequent flyer are the problem. 50% of Britain do the patriotic thing, they holiday in Britain. The other 50%, some of them take up to 10 to 15 flights a year, and that causes massive problems because aviation is 7% of our carbon emissions. Now, what the interesting thing is being done in this general election, I find, from the Lib Dems and Greens, is they're proposing this tax on the richest will be fund for poor people who have been absolutely hammered by the destruction of the bus network in Britain. Under the Tories, 50% of the bus network was destroyed. What we need to do is use the money from the rich flyers to restore rural bus services. The pensioners in rural areas have been hammered by the destruction of the bus service. And I think that's what's really interesting about this new approach to environment is we tax the high polluters, the rich people, and use that to fund poor people to live a more sustainable and better lifestyle.
OK, well, Ben, just come back to that then. I suppose, what is the case against the super rich who take, whether it's a yacht or gas-guzzling yacht or, private jets and all of this stuff, or people who've gone 5 or 6 holidays a year? And what is the case against them paying more to travel so that poorer people can do more of it, I suppose?
Well, I think what Donica's talking about is replacing a tax with rationing. And OK, he says that's a tax, that's a rationing or a tax that's going to afflict the wealthiest and the people that fly the most. OK, so 5 flights a year, that sounds terrible. And most people would sort of sense the social justice, as it were, in that argument. But five flights a year will become 4. 4 will become 3, 3 will, and so on and so forth. In exactly the same way that VAT, for example, has risen from 15% to 17.5% to 20%. So these things are always slippery slopes. These kind of taxes are always increased. sin taxes especially, taxes on behaviours that the government disapproves of, are always incremental and never have any ceiling. And there's never really any principle being offered about where that limit lies. And so I'm not convinced that sort of shifting the emphasis in this way does anything. I mean, it might sort of stir up politics of envy, but.
Well, this is it. I mean, look, Donica, with respect, plenty of people out there, they don't want to just holiday in Britain every single year. They don't want to only eat, locally sourced vegan dinners. They don't want to, have to sleep on a bed of moss in a cave every single night.
Oh, come on, Britain is better than that, Patrick.
Slightly, but, I don't think your politics are a million miles off that, Donica, are they, really? So, I mean, why should people who work very hard, who already pay an astronomical amount of tax, actually be asked to pay a bit more because, someone who fills an aeroplane full of jet fuel, and by the way, will continue to be a multi-billionaire like Michael O'Leary or someone like that, why should Dorothy from number 45 have to pay more?
Well, first of all, I'm very clear. The frequent flyer doesn't tax people who take their holiday to the sun. It doesn't. Secondly, why shouldn't we must understand that we're in a climate crisis. 70 to 8% of people want us to tax more. What's really interesting about the frequent flyer tax, it's a popular tax. When it's being polled, people say, yes, rich people should pay for the damage they're doing and help poor people have better bus services. I think that's a really good deal.
Because only a month. This is one of these polling questions that only a monster answers no to, isn't it? It's like, do you want to see less murder? Yeah, we all want to see less murder, but you have to. When people are actually asked about the practicalities of the zone, because people can voluntarily pay more tax, Donica, and not that many people do that.
Well, there's a serious economic issue here as well as the climate disaster. The economic issue about flights and holidays is that it's a net loss of £26 billion to the British economy. What do I mean by that? Rich people who take 10 or 15 flights a year, they spend their money abroad for people in the tourist industry abroad, whereas actually the people in the industry in the UK suffer because of that. If we could transfer some of that 26 billion spent abroad and do the patriotic thing and holiday in the UK, we do two things. We benefit the British economy and we tackle one of the highest sources of carbon emissions.
I admire your optimism, Donica, but that you are not going to get Simon.
I'm pro-Britain.
You are not going to get Simon Cowell holidaying in a caravan in Skegness anytime soon. I'm sorry.
There are beautiful hotels in Britain. Stop talking down Britain, Patrick. You should come with me and see a beautiful hotel in the seaside resorts of Britain. There's some stunning hotels here.
Only if we can have twin beds, right? But thank you very, very much.